is the commonality between these three stories? Oh, have I put the cart before the horse? Should you tell the stories first and then ask the question? Oh, I better tell the stories. Several of the stories are old stories that no doubt you'll recall, and the first one is about that Buddhist monk who came to his Zen master with the Bible in his hand. He said, "Master, I've just been reading the story about when Jesus Christ beat the olive tree because it wasn't bearing. Master, would you tell me the meaning of this?" And the Zen master looked at the monk and he said, "If you want to know why he did that, become a Jesus Christ." And then there's that story of the great Sufi, Earl Ghazzali, who was traveling with a group of his followers, and they were in a certain foreign marketplace. And as they were walking around the markets, a young man approached them, scoffing at them. And he said directly to Master Al-Ghazali, "I've heard about you Sufis, you're just bags of hot wind, all the teaching, spruiking this and that." But Al-Ghazali made no great response to this. He merely invited the young man over to be face to face to him, and when he did so, he took a rather large ring off his finger, and he said to the young man, he said, "Would you do me a favor and go over to those market stall holders, you know, the ones who are selling the trinkets and the baubles over there, and ask them the value of this ring." So the young man went off, and he came back in a few moments, and he said to Al-Ghazali and the little group, "Oh, the stall holders have said it's only worth about 3 pieces of silver." Al-Ghazali said, "Well, around the corner here, there's a small jewelry shop. Go to the jeweler in the jewelry shop and ask him the value of this ring." And when the young man came back, he had a look of great surprise on his face, and he said to Al-Ghazali, "Oh, the jeweler said it's worth about 50 pieces of gold." Al-Ghazali looked at the young man. He said, "If you want to know the value of a gem, you become a jeweler. And if you want to know the value of a Sufi and Sufi teachings, you become a Sufi." And the last story is about a Chinese Earl. He was the Earl of Wuzi, and he was renowned for his strength. And his prowess came to the notice of the king. The king wanted to meet this fellow, so he sent an emissary with gifts, inviting the Earl to come to his palace. But when he came into the presence of the king was greatly surprised, because instead of seeing this huge, bulky, muscle-bound fellow, he was this skinny little puny fellow. He thought to himself, how can he be the strongest man in the world that everyone is talking about? So he said to the Earl, he said, "Well, what is it that makes you so strong?" And the Earl looked at him quizzically and said, "Well, I can break the legs of a grasshopper. I can accost an insect." Well, the king was affronted. He thought this fellow was making fun of me, making jest of me. So he got himself up to his full height and he said, "Look," he said, "in my court, I pride myself on having men of strength, and my men of strength can pull a rhinoceros. They can haul a group of elephants by their tail, and still it's not good enough for me. Tell me then, what is your strength?" And the Earl was quite unfazed by this, and he said, "You know, I heard of a master called Master Cheng, who was said to be the strongest man in the world. But even his family had never seen his strength. So I resolved that even if it took me a lifetime, that I was going to remain with him until I learned all he knew." So I went to Master Cheng, and Master Cheng told me, most people want to be able to do things immediately. Climb a mountain, run a marathon. They want it now, now, now. But I say to you, if you want to hone your abilities, if you want to be able to hone your seeing, study an ant crawling across the floor. If you want to hone your hearing, listen to the ringing of bells. In this way, your abilities are expanded naturally and effortlessly. And when your abilities are expanded naturally and effortlessly, when you are posed a challenge, because it is not daunting because of your abilities, you have no need to combat with your abilities. Now, the king was kind of nodding when he heard this. And the Earl of Woodsey said, "You know, my prowess was not put out to all because I boasted about my strength. It was the way I used my strength. But even now, I have not attained to that which my master, Master Cheng, had attained, because he had reached that stage where he never needed to show his strength, because there was nothing in life that daunted him." So the question is posed again. What is the commonality between these three little stories? What is it that you've discovered in your state of being now, where awareness has brought a natural expansion of your sensory abilities effortlessly? How then can we interpret these stories? What does it mean, the honing of abilities, when for us it's merely been the discarding of all barriers, so that sensitivities and awareness has naturally expanded without boundaries? Is there anything now in your life that daunts you? Even this latest cyclone, what did you do? Immediately set to the task of preparing, without panic, without fear? Was there a thought in you about beating this cyclone? What are we now? What's happened to us? Has all of reaction been taken out of our life? What happens to awareness? I venture to say not one of us would ever again call a life an arena. Never again would we refer to conquering something or someone. Why? What's happened to us? What's the commonality in these three stories? To allow us to perhaps have an understanding of what it is that's there for us now.
That life is unfolding by itself.
Yes.
And we are part of life, then we have nothing to do except to be there, and then we will do what has to be done.
Yeah.
We don't have to be in charge
No.
of the universe or the other,
Mhm.
or whatever.
So yes, we can recognize that in that state of oneness there is a non-separateness. So this in itself takes out the combativeness out of life, the need to look at everyone and size them up and say, oh, how am I going to deal with this one? Isn't it? But what is it now? What is it about this Master Chang? He never had to show his strength, and yet it was known that he was the strongest man in the world. How can it be?
Because the strength wasn't his.
The strength wasn't his. Oh no. But how does that relate for us now, in our dealings with others? Where have we honed our skills? Have you practiced watching an ant crawling across the floor? Did you practice being non-reactive? If someone goes to punch you in the nose, did you sit there like a monk?
Because in a way, if a person went to punch in the nose, there's not much to do. It's happened twice to me, and effectively, when you don't move,
Yes.
they stop.
Mm.
There's no one to punch.
Well, what are these stories about? Recognizing that we still have that question that remains for us to answer.
Because there's no need to show strength once you realize you have it. There's nothing to prove and nothing to demonstrate to yourself or to others. Because you know that you have that strength, whether it's internal or external.
All right. But what are we referring to when we say strength? What has strength?
Ease.
Unity. Unity.
Okay. Ponder on these stories a while. See what awareness it brings up.